Okay, well, hello everyone. Welcome to our second workshop from the REEU ECN workshop series. Are you ready? And this time we have Dr. Craig Rotter, and he will talk to us about mastering public speaking. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and let him begin.
All right, thanks, everybody. I'm Dr. Craig Rotter, and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Agricultural Leadership Education Communications at Texas A&M. So it is good to be with y'all. And I was very blessed to be asked to give a quick presentation and give you some things to think about today in a quick 30-minute session. So without hesitation, I thought I'd start with a little bit of a story, and I'll call this story "The Guy Who Couldn't Stop Sweating." And so just kind of get us thinking and to share a little bit of my own story. But I will open up and say I haven't always felt comfortable speaking in front of people. And, back when I was an undergrad, anytime I had to speak in front of a group, um, especially if it was a large group and there were big bright lights shining, and if the room was a little warmer, like maybe an organizational banquet, something like that, there'd be a moment almost always where I'd feel an intense wave of anxiety rolling over me. And, my heart would start pounding. Some of you can probably relate to that. And, my hands would start shaking a little bit. And worse, I would just start sweating from my forehead. And not just a little. I'm talking like maybe if I went and ran a mile in the summer here in Texas, that much sometimes because of the stress and the anxiety of having to get up in front of people. And so, I remember one presentation where I was absolutely so nervous that I could barely even hold on to my note cards. And when I stood up, I delivered the talk as best I could, but I was in a suit jacket and a tie, and here we were in about this time of year, maybe a little bit later. And when I sat down, I almost felt a little humiliated as I kept wiping my brow from the perspiration. So I was convinced that everyone there had noticed that and were paying more attention to that than what I was sharing. And my voice didn't crack, but there had to be a pained look on my face. And so that's just one story from years ago. When I was an undergrad student, but when I sat down, I was surprised. One of my peers leaned over and said, "That story you told about your uncle," they said that really landed with me, and so that made me think, maybe I was wrong, and they weren't so focused on me as much as they were probably focused on the message that I was really heartfully trying to share when I was up there. And so that moment, I kind of took a breath, and I realized it wasn't so bad. And so from that point forward, I kind of reframed my experiences in being someone that speaks in public now very often, but back then at an increasing level. So here's just a few things I thought of after that moment. One was that I stopped really trying to impress people. And instead, and I want you to consider this, I started trying to connect with them. So once my lens changed, that was a little helpful. And something else I did was I let go of perfection and realized that I'm never going to be that perfect speaker. And really, no one ever is because there's so many factors that go into public speaking. And so instead, though, I still continued to lean into preparation in a way that worked for me and still works for me and purpose. And I started doing something else. And that was before I go up or before I go on, I take a moment and I do a little bit of deep breathing and just kind of relax a little bit and catch myself in where I am in that present moment versus where I was, where there was still some anxiety and having to get up and do that type of thing. And I still most of the time still do that kind of thing today, and it does help. And I also stopped writing full scripts and instead I'm much more organized through just a few bulleted points. And then my story, the details I want to share are centered around those more often than not. And in pure honesty, I've really accepted that nerves probably aren't always going to go away. They're still going to be there, but I didn't have to let them lead where I was heading when I was up in front of an audience. So that's been a big change for me in doing this work. So there are a few things that I want to share with you today in this quick recorded session. And those of you that are on and live, I think it's fantastic. But that energy I still have on occasion, and but now I kind of know what to do with it. So I really channel who I am and where I am if I'm going to get up and do anything in public and speak in front of others, really in three areas. One is my presence. Another one is a greater sense and attitude of when I'm up there doing what I'm doing, that's more out of service. And then the third is to make sure that I'm providing clarity. And I'll share some detail on this in just a little bit that I think will help make the point for you. And so, going from the guy that couldn't stop sweating to outside of a few classrooms at A&M where it's so hot you're going to sweat no matter what you're doing in front of people, it's become a lot easier as I've done this over a larger amount of time. So today, there are really some things I really want to focus on that I think will greatly benefit you. And I am an educator, so I'm going to share with you just a few learning objectives that we could hopefully encounter and try to work through. One is, recognizing and understanding that there's a psychological and a physiological root system in the anxiety that tends to hit us if we're going to get up and speak in front of people. And so if we can learn a few strategies to work through those things that are very natural, that might be a plus. Another thing is, to kind of gain practical tools where we project more of a confidence in doing it in a way that works for us as individuals. So it might be even in one-on-one conversation. Sometimes I've been on a panel. Sometimes I've sat where it was almost more like an interview, where we sat in very relaxed chairs on a stage in front of people. And then other times you have an audience where you can't even see everybody because the room is so large. And so working through that with some tools may be good. Another thing that I hope we can talk about and think about is improving our techniques in our vocal delivery, in our body language, and our physical presence, and hopefully creating some sort of meaningful connection with the audience and to ourselves when we're up doing what we're doing. And then another is maybe to learn how to organize and structure more of a clear and engaging, memorable presentation. What do people walk away with after we've been there and shared something out of our own existence and having that moment where the mic's in our hands or the eyes are on us? And then one last thing is I'd hope that we could leave with a set of exercises and maybe some habits that you may start practicing to really prepare for future speaking opportunities. So with that in mind, I really want to just kind of move us forward in a handful of sections. I kind of broke this up in my mind. And the first thing is to start with a question. And I know there aren't a whole bunch of people on here, but if you want to type in the chat, and Abria, if you'll help me with this because of the way Teams works. But the question is, what is one word you associate with public speaking? So if you would type in one word, and then Abril, if you'll share those with the group, that would be wonderful. What is one word you associate with public speaking? So just type that into a chat, or you can turn your mic on and share it.
Is everybody able to type? Okay.
So if you'll read those out, that would be good.
Okay. Waiting on some replies here.
So, yep, they're popping up. So feel free to read those out.
Okay. Connection.
Okay.
Engagement.
Mm-hmm.
A person said it terrifies me.
I can relate. Okay.
Confidence.
Those are good. The confidence just popped up on my screen. My screen must be a little delayed. Okay, that's good.
Well, yeah, there were two confidence. So
okay, gotcha. Very good. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. So let's think about this just for a second and kind of warming up. And I mentioned that I tend to do a few grounding exercises on occasion. and then even that breathing that I mentioned that seems to help. And so if you'll take a moment, and I'm going to show you, but I tend to do this breathing exercise that can help before I'm actually up on the stage, or even while I'm just sitting there or getting used to being there. And you can do it in a way that kind of hides it, but if there's a moment where someone else has the attention, you can do this and just kind of privately do it and do it in a way where it's not so noticeable. But the trick in my mind is to do this, and it's to inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then pause for 4 seconds after you exhale before you inhale. So try that. So inhale for 4 seconds or four counts, hold it for four counts, exhale for four counts, which is where you tend to be a little more relaxed. And then before you take another breath, just pause without taking another breath for 4 seconds. And you do this 3 times. You don't have to do that right now, but I find if you do it 3 or 4 times, it really can calm your nervous system. The other thing is, even while you're speaking, focus on your breath, because sometimes folks can get overwhelmed enough physiologically where you lose your breath, and then you weaken your voice and you weaken your presence. And so focus on your breath as a tool to also kind of center your thoughts. And again, if you're being asked questions, it depends on the setup and how whatever you're doing is being formatted. But if you can take a moment and focus your breath, I think you can also in that moment center your thoughts just a little bit. And an audience usually is pretty good with giving you just that moment to process, especially if there's a question asked or if you're making a transition to another area in what you're there to speak and share. So there's that. Another thing is to feel your feet on the floor. Focus on your feet. And often when I teach classes, I'll share with students that if their feet show up to class, that means that they're there. So as able, if their feet are in the room, uh, they will at least be there, and then we'll work on them having their heads there. But if you feel your feet on the floor, focus on your feet for a little bit, and that'll help you be a little less wobbly. And to me, it can really bring a presence and a personal groundedness that you might need, especially if you lose that or don't have that because your confidence in the moment is shaky. And another thing to do is just kind of relax and maybe shake out your hands a little bit, maybe your shoulders, and kind of focus on your posture, and even think about your neck a little bit. And it's hard with this because of the way that the camera works with these virtual pieces, where my head tends to be a little crooked naturally because of the way that it images in the reverse order when we're sitting in a video. But when you're in person, it's a little easier to manage that. And but it'll help release tension and kind of reset your energy if you shake out your hands just a little bit, and your posture and your shoulders and your neck a little bit. The other thing is for me is before you even go on the stage, if you can have a moment just to be off from it, look at the audience before you start speaking and look all around the room and familiarize yourself with the space and where people are, and maybe make some eye contact with a few folks. That can also set you at ease, and smile a little bit. Just a little bit of a smile can help as well. So those are a few things to think about in terms of kind of warming up before you are actually on stage, or once you're on the stage, you can learn how to do this and figure out how to do it in a way that's not so obvious. So that's kind of just a little bit of a section one and where I wanted to go today. A section two to me is a little bit more focused on managing anxiety, actually managing it and projecting that confidence. And so a big question, why do we get nervous? And why do you get nervous? Maybe writing down a few ideas on your own about why that happens. But I'd imagine there's a few things that we may have in common. And so let me share a few of those. One is a fear of being judged or criticized by others. And so that can really make you nervous when you fear that they're going to literally be judging you by how you're coming across in doing what you're doing. Another might be that you really worry about forgetting your content or screwing up, right? Making a mistake. And so worrying about that can throw you off and make you nervous. Another might be the pressure to to appear knowledgeable. And I think about our graduate students. I think about our undergraduate students when we put them on the spot and try to have them get up and do something, especially if they're not that knowledgeable yet. When they're really feeling the pressure that they need to appear to be knowledgeable or worse, perfect. And then one other might be some past negative experiences you've had with public speaking that stay with you. So every time you're having a new experience in public speaking, you literally are back to that other moment when something didn't go the way you had wished, and it brings back those nerves. And then another thing is we're human, and so we naturally activate the body stress in response when we're under pressure. And it's almost a threat sometimes to our system to actually be able to get up and speak in public. So think about those a little bit and just realize those are all very natural. And again, if you can work to mitigate some of those, that might be good. So here's something else to think about. You may want to create your own mindset reframing your whole mindset about public speaking. And you can do that in a moment when you're doing this at a particular place, or you can do it when you're not on stage and just stop, close your eyes, and just think through everything that's related to that. And so let me give you a few things to think about with this. One is if you're going to create your own mindset and try to reframe that, you may want to shift from this how do I sound, because we all sound the way we sound. You can practice and change your voice to some degree, but you're you. And so shift from how do I sound to something more like how can I serve this audience? And how is it that whatever I'm sharing, I'm really about getting that into their heads and into their brains and their spirit rather than constantly focusing on how you sound. So there's that. Another thing you may do if you're going to reframe your mindset is to replace perfectionism with presence. Every one of us as a human being has a presence. And often when I'm in classes, I really work to get students to, early on in the semester, um, hold each other's hands and shake hands, of course, depending on culture and practice and who they are. But creating a whole different mindset in the classroom in terms of reframing how people interact and recognizing that everyone there is human. So replacing that perfectionism with just the notion that you're going to be real, that you're not going to be robotic, and that literally that space is going to be yours with the other people, right? And so that might take some of that stress off when you reframe it. Another thing is to focus on your purpose and not on yourself. Why are you there? What needs to be delivered in terms of the content, and less of focusing on you may help. And then recognize that nerves, to me, are normal. And really, you have nerves only because you care. You really want to do a good job. And so recognizing that. And so you might move to doing some affirmations, just some words that you share in your own head, like, I am prepared and I'm capable, and telling yourself that. And the other thing is nodding yes often for your own good. So before you go onto the stage, or even while it's happening, do some yes nods, because your body, your whole psychological and physiological frame hears and sees that. And when we do this, it often helps us, and it's really for our own good. So those are a few things that you can use to create your own mindset and kind of reframe. So very quickly, I'm going to share a few strategies. I thought this would be good today. So one of them is, so these are strategies. Let me back up. These are strategies that should help you with your confidence. So obviously, one would be know your material. So here's some things to consider there. Knowing your material, understanding the concepts deeply instead of memorizing a script. If you know the content, don't worry about how it's presented as much as the fact that you know it. So that could be something that could be a big plus and take some of that stress off and make you more confident. Summarizing your ideas in your own words so that you internalize it. Each of us speak and each of us think in a way that is very unique to ourselves. And so summarizing your own ideas in your own words to internalize them. Prepare examples that make your content both relatable and memorable. And if you can relate some of your own stories in there, that also should help you with your confidence because you're really just telling some stories out of your own existence rather than pulling it out from some other place where you may not be as comfortable. Anticipating audience questions. Think ahead even before you show up. What are some questions they may ask? So when you're preparing and working to know your material, think through what the needed responses ought to be and could be with any question that they might ask. And you're not going to have them all because you never know what someone's going to ask. But in that time, you ought to be able to relax a little bit, do some thinking and processing. But the more you know your material, the better you are in terms of likely getting up there. And then the last thing with this is really reviewing your content across several days rather than cramming. We know that from taking exams. If you can speed that up a little bit, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to speed up a little bit and let me throw a few more things out to you. One is to practice out loud. You want to build some confidence when you're somewhere else, act like you're up there and practice. So observe your own body language and move very naturally, shoulders down, just do what you do. You might record yourself just a little bit and listen for your tone and your clarity and your pacing, how fast you speak. Practice with a friend and ask for their trustworthy feedback. They're going to give you good feedback, I would imagine. Stimulate the environment you'll be speaking in. And so in your own head, not stimulate, simulate. What was I thinking? Simulate the environment you're speaking in. So just imagine that you're actually in that room. And if you have a chance to see the room in advance, that can help you. So in your own head, imagine you're already there, days ahead of actually being there. You might time your sections to ensure you stay within the allotted window of time that they're giving you. And then you may also um, work to give them what they'll gain, and trying it. Let me reframe this a little bit. This is one that I'm kind of throwing out there that's a little different, and that's work on already thinking through what you're going to give them by what you're going to say. Let me say it that way. And so try to give them what they asked for. If you've been invited to speak, they probably will share some things that they wanted you to talk about. Think about that a few days in advance. Okay, so let me give you one more. And again, I'm going to speed up a little bit for sake of time. I could probably do this for an hour, but I'm glad we are doing this in just a 30-minute time frame. So here's another thing. Visualize your success. Picture yourself delivering the message with some calm confidence, right? Visualize that. Imagine the audience nodding and engaging positively. Use visualizations as a pre-presentation ritual. So, you may be using slides, you may be using some other things, but kind of see how you're going to be successful in your mind before you're actually up there in front of the people. And so then the last piece in this confidence strategies component is reframing your nervous energy. You're probably going to be nervous anyway. So how can you reframe that? So I said before, you really acknowledge that nerves are just a part of the process. So acknowledging your nerves, uh, look at those as excitement with a purpose. Use those nerves in your speaking. So you might convert your adrenaline from your nerves into focused enthusiasm. That's a diversion and utilizing that energy in a positive way. Speaking through your nervousness, often that'll dissipate after you open and are up there for a little bit. If you're speaking through your nervousness, you'll put that behind you. You might want to move your body a little bit before speaking to discharge excess energy. So you might walk around the back of the stage a little bit or in another room and just get rid of some of that extra energy before you go up. And then you might be a little more relaxed. And then the last thing is connect with a few audience members to shrink the size of the room. If you're in a space where you can get off the stage and actually go and interact with them up and down the aisles, make eye contact, or before you get up there, visit with a few of them before you go up. All right, so we have about 4 minutes left. Let me share a couple of more things. One is engage. If you're going to engage with your audience, focus on your voice. There, you can alter the pitch of your voice to emphasize emotion or to keep interest. You can tell I do that a little bit. I don't have a range as much, but I stress things a little differently when I speak, and that's out of practice. Pausing briefly before and after key messages for impact. When I teach, I do that where if there's something that I want to emphasize, I literally will pause and give them time to think about that, or for them to recognize, the audience to recognize, ooh, that must be important because he's pausing. Sometimes I will say what I'm trying to emphasize a second time or a third time to really articulate clearly that that's important. All right, so that's voice. Body language. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart so that you're stable wherever you are. And again, that probably varies depending on the types of shoes you decide to wear, etc. You want to avoid closed off gestures where you're kind of tight and instead open yourself up a little more. Let that energy flow out. So try to avoid crossing your arms. Keeping your hands out of your pockets would probably be good. Relax your shoulders and keep your chest open and keep your body frame pretty straight, and then move purposefully rather than pacing or getting fidgety. So if you're going to move around a little bit, do that again to either dissipate some of the energy or to even bring some of the energy in so that you stay focused. Last few things, eye contact. I mentioned this before, but connect with individuals across the room, not just in one section. So being conscious, each of us has a bias in terms of where we tend to look in a room. So be conscious of that, and that takes some practice. Maintaining eye contact for a full sentence or thought. So look at one member or a few members and talk through a whole sentence or a section, looking at the folks in that space, and then work that way around the room. Find the soul of the individual in their eyes. So when you're speaking, literally look almost through them and realize that they're another human being and you're interacting with individuals, especially if it's in a large room. And then I'll share a few more. If you're virtual, look directly at the camera as best you can for a stronger presence. All right, and then use eye contact to reinforce your sense of being sincere and again, your confidence. And then the last piece that I want to share with this is your energy and your presence. So here's just a few things to think of there. One is to bring authentic energy. Every one of us has our own energy that we bring. So engage as if you're in a conversation rather than where you're so built up in that you have to deliver this message from on high. So engage as if you're in a conversation. Show passion for the topic. That helps build trust and interest, right? Smile naturally. And if you're not a natural smiler, just be yourself, but produce a warmth from your presence. And then be present with your audience. Respond to their reactions and feedback in real time. So if you get a laugh, let that sit for a little bit. If there's a little bit of seriousness, let that be absorbed, especially if you're sharing something that may be a little more personal and emotional. All right, so the last thing, we're just past time, it looks like, but I want to share just a couple more things since we started just a tad later, and that is structuring your speech. So some things you can do here. Start with a strong opening. Start with a story. Today, briefly, I started with a story about how I used to sweat so much when I would get up in front of an audience. So start with a story that relates to the core message. That would be cool. Use thought-provoking questions to draw the audience in. What are some questions you could put up on the screen if you're utilizing that, or just verbalizing them to the audience to get them think? Open with something that is surprising in terms of a statistic or a unique fact. That might be good. Quote some well-known source and connect that to the message of the talk. And then always, clearly state your purpose and what the audience will gain from the time you're going to have together. So that's opening strongly. Message, the body of your message is pretty important, I think. Focus on just a handful of main themes or ideas. If you do maybe 3 or 4, if you do more than that, that can be overwhelming. And again, you have to focus on how much time you have as well. Personal examples help abstract things seem more concrete. I like to do that. Provide data or evidence, especially if you're a grad student, to support each point. Kind of helps in the body of the message and gives some detail and some facts, some truth possibly in the presentation. Create transitions to guide the audience from one area to the next. And then what I like to do often is, and I do this in classes a lot, is to repeat key ideas to reinforce them throughout the time that I'm up in front of folks. I don't mind saying something two or three times to really emphasize it, as I mentioned earlier. Have an impactful conclusion. So you might want to restate the whole core message in some way that's memorable. You might want to end with a call to action. You might want to tell a short closing story to illustrate the message. And you might want to use some sort of powerful quote to leave a lasting impression. And then the last thing to think about is peer feedback. So, after the talk, if you have some friends in the audience or somebody that you can connect with after ask them some questions. What grabbed your attention from what I shared? What was the did my tone match my message? Was part of what part of the delivery that I provided felt more confident? Were there some times where I was more confident than others? Was the main message clear and was it memorable? Could it stay with the audience? When was the speaker? If I'm the speaker, think about this. Ask them, when was I most personal and personable? When was it more like I was talking to you directly, and when was it more personal in terms of feeling like we were really on a level across the room? And then how did my body language support my words? So again, if you think about these things and keep them in mind, it might be a good thing. Okay, so last thing, I'm going to give you some take-home tools. I think these might be helpful. Uh, Always choose if you're going to do something and try to build it into a practice, spend some time actually practicing it. So you might develop what I'd call a weekly competence routine. You might choose a topic just out of the blue, pick a topic and record a 2-minute talk of you just talking about that particular topic. That could be something you could do at home. Use your phone. You might review the video. If you're videoing it, review the video with the sound off and look at how your nonverbals were. You listen to the audio only, so don't look at the video. Just close your eyes and listen for your vocal strength, your tone, and your feedback, in terms of providing yourself some feedback. What was your pacing like? And then what felt strong? What was authentic? And what could be refined if I was going to make some changes in how I did this? And so the last thing I'm going to share with you is a personal public, what I'd call a personal public speaking toolkit. Practice what I call that box breathing, where you do an inhale for 4 counts, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold it there too for 4 before you take another breath. Do that a few times and before any time that you're going to be doing some kind of speaking. Stand in some kind of power pose for 2 minutes just to create your confidence. Learn what your power pose is. Visualize a successful talk before every single presentation. Before you get up there, what is it going to look like where it was really good and was your best? Prepare some sort of bullet point notes instead of a full script, as I mentioned. Once I moved to that seemed to be very helpful for me. And then another thing is just journal. Write down some thoughts on occasion. Get it out of your head onto paper, and and debrief after you speak. What went well and didn't go well? Get that out of your head. All right, so I'm going to absolutely close with 3 things for you to consider, and then this will be it for today, even though we're running just a tad over in what's being recorded. The first thing is, what resonates with you the most from what I shared with you today? And I'm going to provide my notes, almost a worksheet for you so that you can spend some time looking at what I shared at a later time. So what resonated with you today from what I shared with you? What is something you might apply before you do your next public speaking or your presentation? Think about that. And then here's a biggie. When is your next opportunity to actually be up and speaking in front of other people? You might decide to push yourself to go do one if you do not have one scheduled. So, in closing, I remind you of what I used to be like. And again, I'm not the greatest speaker, but I am pretty authentic. I think you can tell by how I do things. And so, I wanted to leave you with these thoughts that you can do this, but you really need to do it in a way that works for you. So, I know we're a little over, but I want to give just 2 or 3 minutes if anybody has any questions. Always good to do that. It was a lot of information. Not a single question.
Well, I have one question, Dr. Roger. I know you are a great speaker, and I really like the strategies that you shared, and I can see myself delivering a presentation at upcoming conference in April. But yeah, thank you so much for your thoughts. But I have the question is, have you encountered a challenge uh, like engaging with your audience, like you are trying your best but your audience is not engaging? Because I have struggled in my previous TA class when I was delivering a class. So some of the students are like, they don't care, they don't bother. So what can be done in that case?
Well, the plus is you've witnessed me use some of those techniques this spring in ALED 202. So some of the things I do, one is I will put a challenge to them and name it and just flat say, you are not being engaging enough. There has to be something in this that should be drawing you in. What is going on? So with undergrads, I can do that. Again, you don't want to make them feel belittled or embarrassed. So obviously we need to be
Mm,
very, very conscious. If it's an adult audience, a professional audience, you may not want to do that, even though I have seen speakers do that. But sometimes I'll put a question back out to the audience, and if they're not answering it, I may, you've seen me do this. I'll step out into the audience with a microphone and work it a little harder in terms of, if you're not going to participate, I'm going to come to you.
yeah.
And I learned that technique actually from a favorite band that we used to listen to out of New Orleans, Louisiana, that had a presence at any concert they had. And the lead singer was their drummer. So they put the whole drum kit in the middle of the front of the stage. Imagine the drummer being the key singer and energy of a band. That's unusual. And if the audience wasn't participating, he would go out into the crowd with the mic and would literally, if he wanted them to stand up, he would tell them, get your, and something not very nice, up off the ground, and would actually point at them. Or he'd say, we're not going to do another thing until you change what you're doing. So there are some things you can do that are overboard, and there are some things you could do that are a little more subtle and a little nicer, and maybe trying to pull out a little bit of energy from the audience in a different way. What's something you could do to get them to think about something where it relates to them a little bit more, and
Mm,
then find some sort of technique in that moment where you may get a hand up or you get the nods. The nods are showing that they're there, and
yeah.
do something like that. You might have them all stand up and introduce themselves to each other and reframe
Mhm,
the energy, and then start again. But again, if you're on a time clock where you're there, to deliver something, it's a little bit different than if you are giving a speech or talk from the standpoint of like you're giving a lecture in a course. So a lot of that depends on the what and the how and the why and the who.
mm,
But try some techniques that work for you. And again, don't be afraid to put yourself out there a little more to get them to put themselves out there a little bit more. Great
gotcha.
question.
Thank you.
One more question, maybe? And again, people, when this is recorded, they can choose to shut it off and say, I'm done with this. But one more question, maybe?
I
Looks
think
like
there's
Weston's
one more question.
look like
Yeah,
Weston's trying.
yes.
We don't have your
If
sound for some reason, Weston.
if not, you can type it on the chat.
Yeah, if you're able to type it, go
Maybe.
for it. Or
Hmm.
text me. You have my number. Text me if you want to ask it. So It's one of our undergrads in our department, so that's cool.
Okay.
Glad he's on here.
Gotcha.
Give him a second just to see if he's really trying to send something through. You see anything in the chat? I don't yet.
No, not yet. Oh, it is. He's typing.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. And Brill, I'll send you my notes so that you'll see
Of
that
course.
I put stuff out that almost is the whole presentation just structured in a way that hopefully worked for people. So if they miss it, they can look at that and feel like they did participate.
Of course. I will definitely share this with everyone. And for them to have as a tool, honestly, because I would benefit from that, from having just a worksheet of, okay, I'm gonna look over this before so I don't remember any of these tips. Yeah.
Okay, did it come in? I didn't see something yet.
Not yet. The light in
Oh,
here just went off. Okay.
okay, go ahead. Can you read it out?
Yes. Based off the last question, have you ever had an audience that would engage too much?
Yes, I have. And that can equally be distracting. And so how do you tone them down in a way that works? And again, depending on how you're setting up your focus and their focus, you can do all kinds of things. You could have them stop and reflect privately. So the whole audience is then to be quiet and thinking. You might ask them to write something down so that they have to stop talking to write it down. You could ask them if they have your number. You could ask them to text you, or if you have a chat system set up to chat something up where you can see it on a screen, kind of like what we're doing in this. So there are ways to do that. You might actually literally have to say, hold on, there's too much going on, and put your hands out as a space between you and them and try to do that. What if they're engaging with themselves more than they're engaging with you and they're having private conversations? Again, one of my techniques is to literally go to them and go up there and stand and be talking right where they are. That tends to shut that down and moves them to being more engaged with either listening or uh, being more engaged with what you're trying to get them to do as opposed to doing their own thing in the room. I've also been in a room where there have been hecklers, people that were literally there to disrupt and disturb. And there was a gentleman that was a national figure, had worked for a number of U.S. presidents, and there were hecklers in the room one time. And he took his watch off. He paused and took his watch off to be calm and set it down. And he said, I recognize what you're telling me. I recognize your energy, but this is not the place nor the function to be asking that. I would be happy to have a side conversation with you or to provide you more. But with this invited presentation, this is not the time to really be doing this. And again, but recognize what they're doing and recognize their value, but trying to say not right now and not in the way that you're doing it if you can. Rather than calling them out, which just makes it even worse sometimes and elevates it, especially if that's the energy they want from you. So yes, I have had all sorts of times when an audience was what we could call over energetic or over energized in a way that I would prefer it not to be. And you have to think through also some techniques in that moment and practice those in a way that might work for you. Handing them the mic on occasion or burn off some of that energy. Have them do some kind of clapping exercise or something that is very loud and very energized and then bring them back in. So again, it depends on the age group. It depends on where you are, what would be allowed in the space, those types of things. But that's a great question. Well, cool. So we are at a time where I actually have to go get to class, but it was
Okay.
so good to be with y'all. And real again, I'll send you that before tomorrow. And so you can
Yeah.
send that out to whoever you want to share that with. And thank y'all so much for the time and the energy today. I'm so glad that we were on. So thanks for asking.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Roder. This was excellent, and I'm sure that we will put all of your insights and tips into use. So thank you so much.
We'll see when we listen to you somewhere down the road, right? And when we're in
Oh,
your
yes.
audience. So it'll be
Yeah.
awesome. All
That
right.
would be great. Have a good one. Thank
All
you
right.
so
Take
much.
care.